and all. My name is Harpreet, and I work as a middle school coordinator at Bombay Scottish School, Hawaii. And I have been in this education sector since long. And it would sound cliche, but that's my passion. And I love to be with children, love to be with people, and learn from them more than giving them, learn from them. The topic which I have chosen today is communication. It doesn't sound to be a novel topic, but let me tell you, if you look at the first or the top 5 or 10 skills required to be a successful individual in any profession, uh, the most important skill is communication. So it ranks among the top 5 and top 10, and hence we know that we've been listening to this term communication being the key to success, and that's the reason I've chosen this topic. Mm, just giving you a brief idea, we would go through the factual concepts related to communication, and then we will move on to a little more. So we won't be spending too much time on the factual things. Um, these are certain quotes given by important personalities regarding communication, and it only harps how important communication is. People have related leadership to communication. People have said that it's a language of leadership, communication being the language of leadership. So we can't, you know, we can't, uh, uh, we can't prove that communication is not a part of leadership. It is very well a part of leadership. And moving on to the definitions, these are certain things found in the books written by authors or in um, the dictionaries. The words like information exchange, bridging of ideas, bridging of meaning, contacts, exchange of ideas, all these things are the complete essence of communication. They all form communication. And moving on to the next bit, yes, the major elements of communication. Again, all of us must be aware of these things, but at times it becomes important for us to revise or go through the facts again to get on to to master a certain skill. So let's go through this communication process. Of course, it begins with the sender. When a sender, it can be anybody, it can be a student, it can be a teacher, it can be a leader, it can be anybody. The sender has a certain idea in his or her mind. That idea has to be encoded by the sender. If I have a certain feeling or an idea in my mind, it's important for me to encode the idea to decide how it's going to be put up in front of the receiver, in front of the people. If it is a formal setup, of course, my encoding has to be in a formal form. If it is an informal setup, if it is a personal instance, then of course it changes. So encoding is done by the sender. He or she, the sender, chooses a communication channel, whether he wants to communicate directly upfront or a written message, or maybe just be a non-verbal gesture, body language. So the channel also will differ from the way you want to communicate an idea. So the channel matters. Moving on to the next important person in the communication process, that is the receiver. It is the receiver to whom all this is directed. The idea is encoded. It is you put into a channel and it is sent to the receiver. Receiver again can be anybody, a student to student. It can be a teacher. It can be a principal. It can be anybody. So the communication might happen between a student to student or a teacher student, whatever. And then this receiver has to decode the idea, which has been encoded by the sender. So if you can look at these pictures also, they look similar. It has to be same. The encoding and decoding should be same. If that doesn't happen, obviously there is a gap and the cycle breaks. So decoding is done by the receiver. So it completely depends on the sender, how he or she is encoding it, which channel is being used to send this information to the receiver. That's where if at all these two are not in sync, if at all decoding and encoding are not in sync, of course the miscommunication, as I said, happens, and misinterpretation too happens. Once the idea is decoded by the receiver, he or she sends a feedback. Feedback can be as simple as a small nod, as simple as writing an email saying acknowledge, or anything for that matter. You have to send a response. Without this block, again, the chain remains incomplete. So the cycle has to be completed in this way: sender, idea, encoding, communication channel, receiver who decodes it and sends a feedback to the sender, which completes the cycle. So whenever we are communicating with anybody, with our staff members, with our students, with our teachers, with anybody, we have to ensure that this cycle gets completed. Moving on to the next one. Yeah, this part is something called as noise or disturbance. The noise or disturbance can happen at any stage. It can happen while the idea itself is getting formed in the sender's mind. It can happen while it's being encoded or in the channel. You may do a phone call, you can't be heard properly, it gets miscommunicated. You may have an idea, you've not written it down properly, it may get miscommunicated. Yes, it may happen here at the receiver's end where he is decoded or she is not decoded it properly, correctly. So the noise happens here. And of course, during the feedback as well. If this is not clear, the feedback also will be wrong. So noise can happen at any stage, and we have to try our best to keep that away from the process. We are pretty aware of these things. It's just that I would like to harp on these things because these are our daily, daily tasks. So types of communication can be verbal, can be non-verbal. Looking at the verbals first, verbal types of communication. As a leader, you or even as a teacher or even as students, you need to have meetings. You need to meet people. You need to, if you want to discuss a certain idea. Yes, so that the one-to-one exchange of ideas happen, the encoding and decoding happens at the same level. So meetings can be held. Of course, a proper agenda should be sent before the meeting. The time, date, everything should be communicated well. After the meeting gets over, the minutes should be sent. That's another form of communication that happens. So if you're holding a meeting, also the time, the date, the agenda, the meeting, and the minutes of the meeting, all that's complete. That completes the meeting. Moving on to emails and text messages. This is our daily job, whether it is at the professional front or at the personal front. Text messages, even emails for that matter, are used in abundance. But we need to be very sure of what we want to write, what we want to send to the receiver, how we want him or her to interpret it. So the tone of our message, the tone of our writing also matters a lot. Whether you want to be upfront, whether you want to be a little harsh towards the person, whether you want to be extremely polite, whether you want to express your sympathy, etc., etc. So what you want, the idea in your head should be encoded properly, even when you're writing down your messages. Principals or schools, for that matter, communicate the most through circulars which are sent out to the parents. So parents and school have this connecting bridge called circulars, and all the information or whatever the information has to be passed on to the parents is done majorly through circulars. So your circulars should be, be crystal clear. There shouldn't be any doubts. There shouldn't be any ambiguity, because if you are vague in encoding your ideas, it will lead to miscommunication and a break of or misinterpretation. Phone calls, the most it's a channel which is used by all of us. So again, the tone matters, the time of the day you make a phone call matters. You need to understand the other person's perspective also when you're making a phone call. Yes. Speeches and presentations which are done by either teachers or leaders in school, what you want to convey and how you want to convey and to whom you want to convey matters a lot. What, to whom, and how. These three are going to decide what kind of communication you want to have with the receiver. Casual talks, even among the co-teachers, in the corridors, in the school building, when you're having a casual talk, you need to be very cautious of what you're talking, how you're talking. But because at the end of the day, you are in this formal setup, you are in the school building. I'm not saying you should be formal all the time, but you also have to be very mindful of what you are saying and to whom you are saying so. Moving on to the non-verbal parts, we've been learning about these. We would have heard about this many a times, but these are the ones which are neglected the most. Body language of a person matters the most. The moment you enter the room, the way you stand, the way you look at people, the eye contact, everything matters a lot in communication. So if you are wanting to make a speech without having an eye contact, I don't know if you'll have the audience's attention. So your body language will matter a lot. We being in the profession of teaching, how sympathetic you are, how loving you are towards your children does matter. So maybe giving a high five, or little things, a pat on a child's back, or encouraging a child, all these things also would matter. Of course, keeping all the protocols in place. uh, Appearance of the person, we have to be, it's I can't harp enough on how a teacher should be, how a leader should be dressed, how or he or she should be in his or her appearance when he's in a formal setup space. To the moving on to the fourth point, proxemics, which means how you're using the space which is given around you. Are you too close? Are you standing at the other side of the table? Are you next to the leader? We can't cross our lines. So we have to manage the space around us appropriately when you are communicating and with whom you are communicating. Uh, Chronemics refers to the time which is used when you communicate something, whether it's kept brief. There are certain ideas which will require a lot of time and you will take time to explain things. There are certain ideas which can be just finished in a brief period. So there's no point in stretching them. Similarly, the ideas which are too elaborate cannot be cut short. So you have to be very mindful of how lengthy your communication would be. Vocalics or paralanguage, the tone in which you're talking, the 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 attitude in which you're talking, the mood that you are conveying to the listener, again, matters a lot. At times we would say, we would talk about a leader saying that, oh, he doesn't seem to be in a great mood. He wasn't great when he answered that. So these are certain things which subtly get translated into messages. So your tone, your volume, everything would matter when you're talking to people. Silence in itself is a language. Um, Silence has a huge interpretation. So make sure to use silence correctly. You can't remain silent at places where you want to express something. You will have to express yourself, probably diplomatically, or negotiate your way out, but you can't remain silent. At the same time, when you have to remain silent, you have to. So as I said, silence also has its own language. um, Facts about communication for leaders. As a leader, I have to be authentic. There has to be transparency among the teachers. There has to be a transparency between me and my teachers, between me and my students. Uh, we can't fake it. We have to remain authentic to gain their trust, to gain their complete confidence. A leader has to be visible. He or she has to be seen on the he should be on rounds. People should be identifying him. Otherwise, you can't be sitting in one room and passing instructions from there. You will have to be seen. You'll have to be on the ground to see what happens. Being a good listener is very important. It's not just necessary to talk all the time. You have to listen. You have to gauge what the other person is trying to say and what he means, so that you decode his message correctly. So you have to be a good listener there. Contributor. When you are having a meeting, when you're having a discussion, that doesn't mean you will ask your teachers or your students to just discuss and finalize something. You have to pitch in at times. You have to contribute to their ideas and make assure them that you too are a part of the team. Communication, it's best to remain direct and simple. You don't have to complicate things. You don't have to get another person involved if he or she is not a part of it. You simply approach the person and you can avoid many problems. Be an illustrator. When I say be an illustrator, leaders have to lead by example. You have to talk about the actions which have happened in past, the steps which you've taken in past, the stories which have happened in past. This will only encourage your team to get better at the task. So be an illustrator, be a reinforcer. You have to reinforce the idea. At times, at the first instance, the your team may not be very receptive. You give them time, let it let it sink into their mind. Meet them again with a fresh mind, with a fresh perspective, and try to reinforce the ideas which you want to. Encourage feedback. When you are working as a team, when you're working as a leader, it's important, extremely important, to get the feedback of your co-workers. When I say co-workers, I mean to say your deputy heads, your section heads. It is also very important to get feedback from your teachers. And just getting the feedback is not important. You have to give them an assurance that you will be considering this feedback in a very fair manner. You have to if you are just taking the feedback and not doing anything about it, then they won't be giving a feedback to you next time. So even if it is a yes for a feedback, for a suggestion given, you have to tell them, yes, we ensure that we end up doing that. If you are not agreeing with the feedback, again you have to put it nicely to the next person, saying that, oh, I don't think it seems like a great idea. Maybe we can look at it some other time. So feedback is important, and an assurance that you will be genuinely considering the feedback is also equally important. A leader has to protect his or her reputation. You need to draw the line. You need to understand when you want to get into too much of the details of the conversation and when you want to be away. At times, it's best to be away and watch what is happening. At times, it's best to intervene and get into the conversation. So you have to gauge according to your reputation and the timing that when the conversation happens. And obviously, communication being a skill, we all learn every day. We all learn about communication with every interaction we have with every human being. It's not something which we are perfect at. We work on it every day, and you have to be open to learning. This is a scope of communication for a school leader. So a school leader who's holding on to the vision and mission of the school, which has been passed on to him or her by the management, has to be in constant touch with the management regarding what has happened in the school, what has not happened, why it has not happened, etc., etc. So communication with the management, communication with the deputy heads, communication with the coordinators. The principal cannot work alone. Of course, he will require your support and your suggestions as a team. So you will have to talk out the plan with your team and see what's feasible and what's not. Sometimes people will come up with problems which you would not have thought of. Similarly, with the teachers are the ones who are working at the ground level. You need to understand what practical difficulties they are facing. You can't be again sitting in one room and dictating instructions from there. You have to get down to the ground level. You have to interact with the teachers to understand what problems they would be facing. Leader has to convey and translate this vision and mission of the school to the parents as well, because after all, parents are also the equal stakeholders in the education system. Similarly, of course, the students, who are actually the core, the center of all that is being done in the education sector. So communication with students is equally important. You have to talk it out. You have to meet with them. You have to interact with them to understand their perspective of the situation. So that's about the school leader. And of course, while he or she is doing all of this, he is impacting the society at large too. He's releasing a statement regarding what he wants to do with the young minds. Moving on to scope of communication for a teacher. As a teacher, again, there are various people whom you interact with, the principal, the other authorities in the school. And of course, we are extremely formal when we are doing that. We also have to understand how to interact with our students. Um, our interaction should be such that our students should be able to come back to us if at all they are facing any problem. There should be trust. There should be this. They should be able to confide in you. They should be having that confidence in you. Oh yes, my teacher will help me in so and so situation. Similarly with parents, parents have to be given an assurance of how safe their students are, how much of effort you are putting in with the students in school, and providing them with a proper constructive feedback is what you can do to for the best for this for the students. Co-teachers, you have to interact continuously with the co-teachers and of course the other staff members. When I say other staff members, I also refer to the support staff, I refer to the office staff, I refer to everybody in the school. It's not just okay to maintain good relations with your co-teachers. You have to be great with everybody in school, because after all, you as a school are one whole block and a team. So we can't be working in compartments. And again, while the teacher is interacting with all of these, she is also releasing a statement. She is impacting the society at large.
Ms. Harpreet, just want to mention that like we are running out of time and we have questions lined up.
Okay, yeah. So advantages, we all know, problem solving, decision making, steady flow, uh, uh, great professional bond is formed, and a professional image is created. These are the advantages of effective communication. Repercussions would be poor work culture, low productivity, and high staff owner. Lack of innovation is another one. Individual himself would be low on morale. He would be frustrated. The performance won't be great. And these are the certain statistics which I wanted to highlight. I would straight away go to the third one, the 73855 rule. 7% of communication is done through verbal communication, whereas non-verbal component of our daily communication is our voice, body language. They make up 38 and 55% respectively. So both non-verbal and verbal are important. And I would just want to end my talk with this great quote from Brian Tracy. And as I said, it's a skill and we need to keep getting better at it all the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Harpreet. There are some questions lined up here. I'll read them out to you.
Yes.
The first question goes like this. Do you think school education as it is today consciously teaches better communication?
Uh, if not consciously, definitely through what they are doing with the students. So the projects, the assignments which are handed over to the students. For example, oratory skills or making a presentation, and how to behave in a class, how to communicate with a fellow student. All these little things wherein inputs are given by a teacher or by a head of the school to the students, we do teach communication to the students.
Right. So, second question goes like this. As an educator, how do you encourage children to communicate better?
Yeah. So here I would just want to say that we have to lead by example. My children are watching me all the time, so I can't let my guard down at any time. So the first thing that I would say is I have to myself, I myself have to be great at what I am doing for my children to emulate, for my children to copy me. So I have to be a great example, first of all. That's one. Secondly, of course, if at all there is any issue that you are, just subtly also seeing in the class or in a particular grade, you need to address that. And then and there, maybe you will have to team up with the teachers and build in that kind of a culture among the students. So you can definitely work with the students on that.
Right. Your image, like how you present yourself, like it will create a great impact on the students
Absolutely.
through like everything they observe.
Yes, yes.
So,
I'll just give a small example when the schools began, and children were very, they were in a different space when they came to school. Mentally, they were not prepared to see so many people around. They wanted to be welcomed. So, if I, as a teacher, am able to welcome, if I'm able to show that warmth to them, obviously they will be, reciprocating in the same manner.
right. So somebody is asking about the writing skills of the teachers. In many schools, teachers are not able to write well. What can be done to improve this?
Yeah. So, ma'am, as I said, it's a skill. So we need to keep learning with every mistake that we make. Um, we have to, decide on our role models. We have to follow those role models and see how they are working. That's how I have learned. I have, as personally, uh, observed my role models, how they would write or how they would tackle a particular situation, how they would word this. And once you start having a fair idea of how you want to portray, obviously you will start learning from your role models. So that's the best way. Learn from your role models.
Right. I guess more reading also helps.
Definitely reading will help. When I say role models, I don't negate the fact there's a lots to learn from internet. There's huge amount of information present on internet, and of course we can keep learning. We can update ourselves with various courses which are freely available. So that's of course a technical part of it.
Right. So, what made you take an interest in this topic of communication?
Yeah. So like I said, ma'am, anything, I think, if even if you are very creative, we're talking about design thinking nowadays, creativity, design thinking, collaboration, everything, all these skills will just go down the drain if there is no proper communication. So even if I'm having a great idea, I'm a very innovative person. If I'm unable to translate it to my team, I would fail in implementing that idea. So communication, I felt, was the best one to be take up, and it is applicable to everybody, not just the leaders. It is applicable to the teachers, and as you've been questioning me, on students also, and in any profession for that matter, and also the personal life.
Right. So, Ms. Harpreet, in your observation, how will you rate, with your experience, I'm asking you, how will you rate communication in schools between students and between staff?
Rating communication between students and
Students and teachers, yes. Staff in the sense.
okay, the leaders communication with the student and the leaders communication with the staff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like I've been mentioning in my presentation also, the leader is the center, and he or she should ensure that communication must happen with all the aspects, whether it's the management, whether it's the students, whether it's the teacher, whether it's the parents, or the society also. So it is extremely important for a leader to understand the pulse of the school, and that can be done only when he or she is talking to his students or her students. Similarly, to understand the difficulties at the ground level, the practical difficulties, he or she has to be meeting the teachers to understand their problems, and then maybe bridge a gap between what is expected and what can be done. So equally, they have to be. I would rate them 50-50.
Okay. So you have already covered, rather mentioned about reading and writing. So the question here is the internet a good or bad thing for good communication among children?
Among children, okay. So like we all know, parental supervision is definitely intervention. Supervision is definitely required. I can't be leaving my child alone and asking her to learn from the internet. We as parents, we as teachers, we as leaders have to guide. Probably if I want my students to learn a certain thing from the internet, maybe I can you know give them a certain reference of a certain website, go to this particular website, take up this course and all that. So internet can do great things if if children are guided towards the right towards the right matter. So intervention, parental intervention, teachers intervention, and assistance and guidance is definitely required. Otherwise, it can be disastrous, of course.
Right. We have come to an end with this question. We will close the meeting now because of the time constraint. We have one last question.
Sure.
How to improve school communication with parents and staff?
Extremely important. Like I said, circulars are the first way through which the school communicates anything to the parents. When we started with the pandemic, and now when we are ending, almost coming to an end of it, and things are coming back to normalcy, circulars are the main source of information for a parent. Even if the parent is not actively involved in what's happening in school, he or she will look at the circular, he or she will go through the tone, he or she will understand what's the tone of the circular, what the school wants from the parents and the students. So definitely circular is one. Holding parent meetings at regular intervals matter. Besides having those regular meetings, if at all there are parents who are wanting to meet you, to give them time. Yes, because there would be a certain issue and there would be a problem which you are not aware of, and they would come up, and it will only lead to helping the students at large. So circulars, staff meetings, one-to-one parent meetings, academic review meetings, reviewing the performance of the children, giving parents a very constructive feedback of what can be done with the students. All these things make a nice package.
Thank you, Ms. Harpreet. Now we have now completed the round of questions, ma'am. On behalf of School Journal of Education and schoolreformer.com, we like to thank you for the talk and for patiently answering all the questions. I like to also thank the participants in the meeting, and we will be closing the meeting now, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.